Hi everyone, I'm popping in today to do a quick video about working with PDF sewing patterns. Whether you are completely new to sewing and you've never used a pattern before, or maybe you've just been using commercial patterns like McCall's or Simplicity and you've never used a PDF sewing pattern, this video I'm going to walk through all the basics of PDF sewing patterns. So to start, once you purchase your pattern, you will get some different files. So one of the files you'll get is the instruction booklet. So this has tons of details we're going to walk through in a minute. So the instruction booklet, normally I don't print it. Normally I just refer to everything on my computer, but you can print it if you want. It's purely just your own choice. Then our patterns, we deliver our patterns in two different file types. So the first is the home printing file. So this is the tiled version of the pattern. You can print this on A4 paper or 8.5 by 11 paper. And all this is just your pattern kind of chopped up into like a puzzle basically, and you assemble it like a puzzle. This is one file type that you'll have. The other file type that we deliver in is the AO copy shop. So this, you can see it's a huge paper, and this is the pattern non-tiled. So you can see I have the full pattern piece here, and this is my preferred way to get my PDF patterns because I don't have to do the cutting and the assembling like you do with the tiled version. So I have a copy shop that prints A4 here, but there are also online options, which I will drop some of them below, that you can send them your pattern file and they'll print it and just drop it in an envelope to you right in the mail. And that's probably like the most cost-effective way to print your AO patterns. One thing I do want to mention with PDF patterns, super important, you always want to select actual size. You don't want to scale the pattern because, like for example, if I took this pattern and had it fit the page, it would expand the pattern and make it bigger than it actually is, and I will end up with a pattern that is not the right pattern. So how you can make sure that you've printed it in the right way is with your tiled version, you want to just print the first page, the very first page. This is where we have our size checker. So this is 4 inches. So all I do is I just take a tape measure, and then you want to measure this out. So I just take my tape measure and I measure it to the line and make sure that it is indeed 4 inches. So once you, if this line is bigger or smaller than 4 inches, you know that you've printed it incorrectly. So you want to go back to your printer settings and make sure that you've selected actual size. So once you have that first page double checked, then you can print your entire file. And that way you know for sure that your pattern hasn't expanded or shrunk. So now for the instruction booklet. So the first thing you have is your sketches. So you'll see the front and the back. You'll see various views if your pattern has different sleeve options or different things. So you have your sketches. Then you have the description, which will tell you about the pattern, about the design specifically, like things like pockets and how the neckband is finished and all that. So that's the first page. Then we get into these grids. So these grids have a ton of information. So the very first thing you want to do is find your the body measurements. So this is how you can understand which size that you're going to make. So here, this is a sweatshirt. This is a Bowery sweatshirt. So I have my measurements of my bust, my waist, and my hip. So I take those measurements and I find them in the chart. So my bust is a 34, so I take that over and I'm like, okay, 34 to 35 bust is a small. So I know if I'm going with my bust measurement, I'm gonna make a size small. What do you do if you're in between sizes? So if you're in between sizes, one of the first things that I like to look at is the finished garment measurements. This will help me understand how much ease is in the garment, So if I am between sizes with my bust, I would look at the finished garment measurement for the bust and understand how much, like this is our Bleecker sweatshirt. It has a ton of extra ease around the bust because that's the style of the garment. So then I understand, okay, I have a lot of ease, so that I can make the decision to go up or down if I'm between sizes. The other thing you can do is if your hip is outside of if your hip is a medium and your bust is a small, well, you can think about what kind of garment you're making. If it's a sweatshirt, your hip measurement may not be as important as your bust measurement. If you're making a skirt, for example, your hip measurement is going to be much more important than your bust measurement. So also just kind of understanding what you're making and where it's going to fall in your body will help you decide the size as well if you're between sizes. The other thing that these charts will give you is your fabric that you need to buy, the amount of fabric. So again, you want to you find your size. So if I'm a medium, then I will follow the chart down and understand how much yardage of fabric I'm going to need. The other thing that this will tell us is what kind of fabric we need to buy. So whether it's a stretch knit or a woven or a lightweight or a medium weight fabric, that is all going to be written here in the recommended fabrics. Then we also have notions. So this will tell you if you need to buy a zipper and how long of a zipper you should buy, or how many buttons you need and what size buttons do you need, and other details like that with your notions. Okay, the next thing you'll find in your instruction booklet is how to print your pattern. So we walk you through all the details of printing your, getting the scale right of your pattern, and then also how to print just your size. So our patterns come layered by size, meaning that you can print only your size if you want, which makes actually using your pattern so much easier. You can see here, I've just printed only my size, and that way I don't have to get confused with the lines. Like if you print all of the sizes that are available in the pattern, you'll have a lot of lines and they can get really confusing. See, for example, this one, I've printed all the sizes and I have multiple cutting lines. So I have a blog post that walks you through how to print just your size, so I will attach that below somewhere so you can check it out. It's really simple to do, and I highly recommend using the layers to just print your size. It makes it so much easier. The next thing you'll find, if you're using the tiled version, you will find a map that will tell you how all of your pieces go together, and so that you can understand, make sure you're putting them together right. This is really helpful. This is kind of the overview of the puzzle. Next, we're going to find the cutting layout. So these are the guidelines of how you can lay out your fabric. So you lay your fabric and then how you can place your pattern pieces on the fabric to make the most use out of the fabric. So this is going to just show you how to lay it out. Here we have like the ribbing pieces, like the bands. This is a sweatshirt. So it'll also show you which pieces you need to put on the fold. And so you can follow this to get an idea of how to lay out and cut your pattern. Okay, and then we have our sewing instructions. So one thing I want to note is you'll always find what your seam allowances are for the garment. So you want to check that out. Sometimes different pattern companies have different seam allowances, so you want to check that out. And then we just have our step-by-step instructions. So this will tell you exactly step-by-step how to assemble your garment, and we have some illustrations there as well. The very last page just gives you some information about different hashtags where you could share your garment, and I would love to share your makes. You can also check out other people's makes using those hashtags as well. Okay, now I want to quickly go over how to actually read your pattern pieces. So there's lots going on these pattern pieces, so let's walk through what we can learn from each of our pattern pieces. So let's start right here in the center. Obviously we have the brand, then you have the name of the garment. So if you have multiple, if you're working with multiple patterns at once like I usually do, you can keep them sorted by the name of the garment. Then you have the name of the pattern piece. So this is the back, and it is pattern piece B. And this will come in handy when you get into the sewing instructions. Sometimes we'll reference like, back B, sew back B to front A, and that'll just keep it really clear which pattern piece that you're working with in the instructions. Then this is a really important part, is how many to cut. So this is telling me cut one on fold. So I understand, like, okay, I just need to cut one of these, but I need to cut it on the fold. So this is the other thing, is you have these arrows that tell you the pieces that you should cut on the fold. So that's kind of your indication. Then we have, also in the center, we have our grain line. So this is the grain line, and you place this parallel to your selvaged edge of your fabric. So once I lay out my piece, I actually measure either end of the grain line against the edge of my selvage to make sure that they're both parallel. This, if you don't do this, like if you've ever had maybe a pair of leggings that you got, fast fashion, and the seam kind of rolls to the front, that's because it wasn't cut on the grain line. So it is really, really important that you, that you cut your fabric with the grain line parallel to your selvaged edge. Some of the other things that you'll find on your pattern piece, this line, so the heavy solid line is your cutting line. That's obviously where you're gonna cut out your pattern piece, and that's where you'll cut your fabric. This line, the dotted line, is your stitching line. So that's where you're going to stitch. And then you have notches. So these are, this is a double notch. So this is the back. In the front, it will have a single notch. So single notches refer to the front of the garment, double notches refer to the back. So for example, this is a sweatshirt. Once I sew my shoulder seam, then I'm going to put in my sleeve. And the sleeve is going to have notches for the back and notches for the front. And that's how I know I can match them up based on the sleeve notch and get the front of the sleeve with the front and the back of the sleeve with my back. So notches are really, really important, and usually I will just clip them in just as they're done here. So you clip them not into your seam line, obviously. Just want to do little 1/8 of an inch clips to mark your notches. So the last marking on our patterns I want to cover are these dot markings. So every once in a while you'll have a dot marking, and it's really important you mark these. These are the pocket of our Thompson pants. And these dots are going to be really helpful because this shows us exactly where we're going to match these up. So I usually mark my dots with chalk or with just picking up one little piece of the fabric with a hand sewing needle. We cover all that in more detail in my course Stitch Playbook if you're interested, but you definitely want to mark those dots and match them up. They're really, really important. So there you have it. That's a quick walkthrough of working with PDF patterns. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any other questions, please pop them below in the comments. I'm happy to come back and answer, and I hope you have a great day. Okay, bye.